Now, Tony Sayegh, Fox News contributor, and Richard Socarides, who's former special assistant to President Clinton and a Democratic strategist. Let me start with you on that one, Richard, as the Democrat. Your thoughts?
Well, start with him.
He wants a lifeline, and I don't blame you.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Listen, I want to say I was glad he came on. I was glad he came on because we were critical of him on the program yesterday, and he probably knew that because he's got good press people. And he came on anyway. I respect that because, you know,
it was brave of him.
It's bad when people make controversial statements and then they hide, right? And they don't want to come out and talk. So good for him for coming on and talking to me. And, you know, the American people will decide what they think of it. But I'm wondering what you think of it.
I mean, listen, I thought it was a great interview. I thought you let him make his points, but you saw his frustration with this issue generally. I think the larger issue he was trying to raise was why should these groups who essentially have a political mission, whether it's on the left or the right, get tax-exempt status? Why do we have a system in this country
That's a good question.
Right.
That is the way you put it is a good question, a reasonable question, and one that we can debate reasonably. The way he went about it was arguably very alienating, you know, because it sounded to so many that he was blaming the victims. And we put up the full screen of some of the witnesses who went, you know, the lady from Iowa who was there talking about how much they put her through. And look at these women, you know, I mean, they're just regular American women they fly into Washington, D.C. to give their testimony before the House Ways and Means Committee about what happened to them. And then you got, you know, these lawmakers like, you haven't heard you tell me how I'm supposed to solve it.
Yeah, in the courtroom it would be blame the victim defense strategy, which is rather ridiculous, even though I know the congressman tried to walk it back, Megan. Look, if what Richard suggested was the fact that, look, the IRS does this, it's an even-handed, objective process, which they have the right to do. Yeah. They should audit groups if need be. They should check on status, question groups. But why were in this matter, liberal organizations with words like progressive, organized,
we know that.
Involved.
And not only that, but to either side, the amount of detail that they went after is, without argument, inappropriate. I mean, you know, some questions, 80 questions, we need it back in 2 weeks. Every donor, they're not entitled to donor lists. Every speech you've ever given, every page on your Facebook page, every tweet you've ever sent out, anybody who's ever spoken before your group, what did they say? Anybody who is connected to you who might someday run for office, tell us what they're going to run.
Are you going to run for office? Are you going to protest and where? That's wholesale targeting.
That's not okay whether you do to the left or the right or both left.
Correct. But in this matter, it's wholesale targeting on the right, and that's why I think the way McDermott handled this by saying, look, I thought the questions they were forced to answer were unjustifiable, but at the same time, you know, you brought it on yourself for trying to be part of our system of government. I thought that showed a real aloofness, and it could also show how Democrats could overplay their hand here. We talk a lot about Republicans politicizing this, taking it too far and losing credibility. I think guys like Congressman McDermott show how Democrats can do the same.
The thing is, Richard, that's one thing for Congressman McDermott to make that point when he is actually talking to his other Republicans, or he's on, you know, one-on-one with an interviewer, me or somebody. Right. But he's got the victim sitting there right in front of him, and the one woman had been in tears moments earlier, and his response, you know, it sounded a little callous to some.
Democrats are frustrated because this is a serious situation which has not been handled well. And it hasn't been, you know, from a communications perspective, it has not been handled well either. But it's a very difficult situation. I mean, there seems to have been some serious wrongdoing that took place on President Obama's watch. I mean, I don't think there's any suggestion that President Obama knew anything about it. I don't think there's any suggestion yet that anybody.
But there's certainly no proof.
There's certainly no proof. There's no proof that he knew anything about it. I think there's no proof.
But it's frustrating for the left because it's like the IRS mucked up the argument now. Right. Because the left had been pushing to have greater scrutiny of these 501c4s, and even many fair-minded folks on the left are saying, not that much.
Do you know something? I think there have been people on the right who have been pushing to have greater scrutiny of the left-leaning 501c4s, too. I mean, there have been people on both sides who said, what we have in this country is a system in which you can get tax-exempt status to do essentially political work. And on the left or on the right, I mean, why should we have...
Quickly, I want to ask you this. Before I go, I've got a minute to the hard break.
Gotcha.
I him the testimony of Kevin Kukugi, who talked about how he lost a $30,000 grant because he wasn't getting his tax-exempt status. And he basically suggested that man may not be believable and that people say things before Congress all the time. What's that about? Why go after the witness explicitly? He tripled down
again, blame the victim. There was also the matter of the man who represented the pro-marriage group whose donor list was actually leaked out. It was traced back to the IRS. The Human Rights Campaign published that list, and his donors were then targeted by leftist groups.
He seems to reject that. He just seemed to reject that.
Well, that's the arrogance that people are really going to begin to think is even worse than the crime in the first place, Megan, and that's why I think Democrats have to be very careful not to dismiss the severity of this.
I got to go because we got breaking news, guys. Thank you. We just got word that the parents of the